Hi, I'm Sherry Zach Morris, and welcome to the 3 Pearls of Wisdom for Healthy Bones and Joints. I thought I would start this series with a little bit of background so you know a little bit about what's going on in my body and why this series is so near and dear to me. First, I'm going to let you in on a secret. By the time you turn 60 or so, you really start to feel something different in your body. I'm going to call it maybe aging. I'm not really sure. But now that I'm almost 63, I kind of feel it. I kind of know what's going on. And it's kind of this steady incline in life in terms of your strength. And then there's this slight little jog downward. And that's kind of where we got to catch ourselves. So this is what happened to me. I started yoga when I was in my late 40s, early 50s, and I did it because of work stress. I love the fact that I was relaxing and breathing and stretching, and that's why gentle yoga always appealed to me. But there was that other side of me, that like youthful side of me that kept on saying, wow, Sherry, maybe you can go and do the things that you used to do. Or maybe you could even do things that you never used to do, because yoga is just so magical and so powerful, right? Well, I bought into that, unfortunately. So fast forward a couple years and I was in an Ashtanga practice, which any of you might know, Ashtanga is a very active and very, I would say, athletic yoga practice. So for me, I was an athlete. I'm thinking, I'm going for it, right? So little by little, I realized I had to start working on a little bit of my structure because my structure was not fitting into the mold of the Ashtanga poses. Go figure. I was going to win out on that. So what I did is I sacrificed my joints to get into the pose that I wanted to get into. And that pose was lotus pose. We all know it. We see the Buddha doing it, right? It's the cross-legged, crisscross applesauce kind of thing, but your ankle is on top of your thigh and you're just totally open to the world and you're in the Zen moment, right? So for me, that was really difficult for the way I was built. My anatomy didn't allow me to get into that pose, but I was bound and determined to do that. So what I did is I noticed that my hips were not going externally outward. Think about the ballerina position number 1, right? When you touch your heels together and then your toes are spread outward, there's only a certain range of motion that you will go into. That's just how we're built. I always like to say it's the way the bones fit into the joints, right? So my femur, right, my big old thigh bone is in my hip socket and it only rotates to a certain level of range of motion that I'm built that way. And other people can have a larger range of motion in that hip socket. So as I was doing lotus, I realized, oh, that's the movement I need to do. I need to externally rotate my hips out like I was in the ballerina first position. Well, I only can get to a certain point. My hips wouldn't go any further when I was sitting down in that lotus position. So the next joint downward took the hit. What joint was that? Yeah, you're right. It was my knee joint. So the internal ligament, we have one on the outside, one on the inside that stabilizes our knee joint, right? So by me going outward and I couldn't go anymore, my knee took that hit, and my internal ligament, my medial collateral ligament, I think got pulled, if not even ripped. So over time, I was determined to get into that pose. I was trying half lotus and of course, never getting to full lotus. But I noticed continually that that inner knee was not feeling good. So now I look back at that time and I realize it was like an overstretched rubber band. You know what that is, right? If you pull a rubber band too much, it starts to fray and then it doesn't have that resiliency anymore. A ligament is like that. When we overstretch a ligament, no matter where that is in our body, it's never going to spring back to what it was. A ligament has no vascular system, which means there's no blood supply to let it heal and repair and get back to new again, right? It is kind of what it is. So I knew that I had to stop the full lotus to begin with, like forget that and forget the half lotus. And I hate to tell you that I also had to stop sitting just even crisscross in the typical Sukhasana pose, right? I had to stop that because it was really hurting my inner knee. So number 1, pearl of wisdom, number 1, honor the anatomy of your body. Respect the anatomy of your body. Be dedicated to protect the anatomy of your body, right? Those 3 things about your anatomy, respect it. It's so very important. So the second thing I learned, and here's a pearl of wisdom to you, is if you do the work, it works. So 2 weeks before I went on a 14-day hiking trip, my knee went out. It's called patellar tracking issue. So basically my patella, which is my kneecap, and my tibia bone, which is on the bottom, right, and how they kind of insert within each other, my patella moves a little bit now and then. How it happens, I don't know. It's not anything that I do that's really extreme. It just happens to do that. Well, that did that, and my knee locked in that position, and I couldn't even take a step. I could not even bear weight on it. I knew something was up. Here I am, ready to go on a vacation. What am I going to do? I call up my trusty chiropractor that I've been going to for 20 years and went in, and he adjusted and moved and pulled, and we're all good to go. But this is what he told me. He said, "You have a sloppy knee, Sherry." And I said, "Whoa, is that a medical term or what?" Right? But I understood what he said. I understood immediately what he said. A sloppy knee. A sloppy knee is not getting the adequate support to be in the alignment that it needs to be in, right? And I knew where that sloppy knee issue was. It was in my medial collateral ligament. Knowing that that ligament is probably not going to get super strong like a rubber band again, I knew I had to work the musculature around my joint in order to support it so that it doesn't slop around anymore, right? So I realized I needed to look at my quads, right? The quads, there's 4 of them. They're very, very important for supporting your knee, lifting your knee, holding your knee sideways, right? So the knee shifts internally, medially, and laterally, right? Externally. It has that little play. It's good when you do those pivoting sports, right? Those things are good. And when we dance, we need to have that support, but we also need to have that support on the front of it, so we lift it up and hold it nice and straight. So I started working on my quads a little bit more diligently. When I was on my hiking trip, I had to be super mindful, super mindful. What I thought the whole time is my mantra was strong and sturdy structure. I was walking and hiking and using my poles and doing all my thing, and I kept on thinking, yeah, I've got to make sure that this leg is super strong, stays in its socket, and everything is great. So I spent so much attention noticing. I was lifting my kneecap, I was pulling up all 4 quads, I was pulling them all the way up almost into my core, and then from my core all the way up into my chest, and then from my chest all the way up to the crown of my head, and I felt that. I felt this beautiful kind of natural support in my body just by focusing on that. So I did great on my trip, no knee problems, yay. And then when I got home, I looked down at my legs, because it was summertime and I had some shorts on, and I said, oh my goodness. My left leg, right, the one that had the patellar problem, is so much more beefed up. The muscles were like more obvious. There was actually a dent. I could see my quads, right, in my left leg. And my poor right leg, it was just like there, right? I'm thinking, whoa, that dawned on me. If you do the work, it works. So that's the second pearl of wisdom. I did the work. I was so conscious. Not that every moment, every step, but I was so conscious in my being and in my core and in my strength and in my stride that I was just going to make sure that that left leg was the strongest it could be. And by putting all that energy and focus into it, it actually got stronger. Physically, I could see that. Visibly, I could see that. So if you do the work, it works. So guess what I'm working on? Yeah, you got it. I'm working on the right leg right now to get it just as strong. And the third thing I noticed, my third pearl of wisdom to you, is you need to do longer holds. Now in yoga class, there's so many different kind of yogas, right? There's the vinyasa flow where it's one breath, one movement, up and down, breathe, expand, close, fold, etc., etc. There's chair yoga, as you know, that's one of my favorites. I love to teach it. It also is great for helping seniors build strength, but I knew in my being, I needed a little bit more. I've been doing a little bit more holding, and guess what? A little more locomotion, I call it. Locomotion, getting out, walking. When you walk, you are using your natural gait muscles. They're not artificially being used and pumped up like we do in a yoga class, right? And those holds in yoga class, absolutely 100% are really, really important. But the locomotion is also, that's where we're going to get our tracking patterns. That's when we're going to notice as I'm walking, I'm going to look down and see, are my feet facing forward? Are my knees rolling in? All of those motions I'm aware of as I'm walking. Now you're probably thinking, Sherry, you're probably not even noticing the scenery, hearing the birds, noticing what's happening around you because you're so in tune with what is going on in your structure. That was a hard thing for me, okay? I want to tell you. So what we need to do is we need to feel as natural as we can, and the strength that we have in our bodies should feel natural and not artificial and not exerting, right? So that's that beautiful balance that we all have to learn. So I want to tell you again, my 3 pearls of wisdom. The first thing is honor your anatomy. That's it, net, especially over the age of 60. Honor it. Notice what your body wants you to do and what it doesn't want you to do. The second thing is, if you do the work, it works. Absolutely. And we're not saying for a couple months. We're saying, I'm sorry to tell you, for the rest of your life, as much as you can. I'm not saying every single day. And then the third thing is, hold a little bit longer in your yoga poses and get some locomotion. Get out there and walk. Don't have to run, just get out there and walk and move your muscles. I'm going to leave you with a little thought. This week I was teaching a gentle yoga mat class, and at the end I had a student come up to me, and she was probably in her mid to late 70s, and she says, I have bursitis in my hips and it's really irritating me, and every time I do yoga it just irritates me, and I just can't get rid of it. And I said, well, what movements are hurting you? And she said, it's almost all the movements, especially anything that moves my hip outward and inward. And I said, well, maybe you need to reduce that movement until you kind of get that bursitis under control. And she says, but I'm going to yoga 3 times a day and it's not getting any better. And I went like this, ay, ay, ay. Seriously? If yoga is aggravating it and irritating it, then you need to stop. Literally, she looked at me and she says, but I'm getting old. I have to do this. And she literally walked away. And I felt really sad because I felt like she doesn't get it, does she? She thinks the more she does something that is supposed to be, quote, good for you, it's going to magically heal everything. No, 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 no. We have to honor the body. If it's injured, if it needs support, if it needs rest, we need to listen to that and we need to honor that. So I'm going to reach out to all of you right now, and I want you to know that I'm here to make you strong and sturdy again, but I also want you to be mindful of what is going on in your body. And all the movements that we're doing throughout this series is going to be to focus on just feeling that strength again in our being. Always pace yourself. Take a rest. Sit down. I don't care. It's all about respecting where you are, and you will notice. Remember what I said, if you do the work, it will work. Do the work right. Do the work mindfully. Don't do it a million times, right? So thank you so much for being mindful of your beautiful body, and we're going to get strong and sturdy together. Namaste.